Welcome to Sustainability Marketing Lecture 5, Values and Objectives. After the analysis of social ecological problems and consumer behavior and how to combine the two, we will talk about sustainability marketing values and objectives in this lecture. We will start with the key term brand ethos, which are the ethical values reflected in the brand. There are 3 learning objectives. The first one would be to understand and reflect the basic assumptions and values of sustainability marketing. The second one, to describe the key term brand ethos. And the third one, to explain the different kinds of objectives in sustainability marketing. Here is the structure of episode 1. First, I will introduce you to the beauty brand Natura. Then we will discuss the basic assumptions of conventional marketing or as opposed to sustainability marketing. Then we will go on and discuss the key term brand ethos, and finally the bottom line of sustainability marketing. Let's start with the sustainability marketing story, the beauty brand Natura. Natura is a Brazilian company and is the leading manufacturer and marketer of cosmetics, skincare, hair products and perfume in Latin America. It was founded over 40 years ago, and the corporate brand is Natura. Its tagline is Bem está bem. It's Portuguese and it's a pun. It actually means, on the one hand, well-being, so that you are well on your own. On the other hand, it means being well in terms of other people surrounding you and the natural surroundings. So one of the core beliefs of the company is expressed in the corporate brand and its tagline. It's the sustainable relationships towards yourself, but also towards the social and the natural and the business environments. And that's something we want to discuss in this lecture, core values of companies. Natura Ethos is one of the main brands of Natura. It was introduced about 10 years ago. Eco comes from the Brazilian indigenous language, and it means life. Natura Ethos draws upon Brazil's biodiversity from the rainforests. It draws upon the traditional knowledge of indigenous people, their knowledge about how to use plants to cure illness, and how to use plants to color your skin, for example. With this brand, Natura also wants to raise awareness for the huge Brazilian heritage. It also wants to develop inclusive business for indigenous people, for local communities. As I said, it was introduced 10 years ago and it's quite successful on the market in Latin American countries. So on the one hand, by using the Brazilian cultural heritage, its natural resources in an environmental way, they also create customer value. Let's move on to the basic assumptions in conventional marketing. Here we will challenge that. There are 4 basic assumptions in conventional marketing, at least. Usually marketers don't talk about it, but they are there, at least implicitly. One is the sanctity of markets, the sovereignty of consumers, the satisfaction of needs, and the peripheral nature of nature. Let's have a closer look. The first one would be the sanctity of markets. After all, marketing is a child of economic theory. There's a strong belief in free markets. Markets are saint, so to say. But there are shortcomings to that basic assumption. Markets have difficulty valuing environmental resources. How would you value a beautiful landscape? That's very difficult to do. And markets usually don't do that. Markets also do not consider thresholds in ecosystems. Ecosystems can take stress to a certain critical point. Once you go beyond that, the ecosystems are out of balance. Markets do not consider these thresholds. Take, for example, in the case of fish resources, as discussed in Lecture 3. Markets do not take irreversible processes into account. Once an ecosystem failed or broke down, you cannot go back to the original status. And markets cannot predict the future demand for species and other resources. For example, there are some plants or animals to fight cancer. We may not be even aware of it, but science might develop it in the future. The markets cannot predict this. All of these are shortcomings of markets. So a blind belief in free markets has its severe shortcomings. And in sustainability marketing, we do not have a blind belief or blind faith in free markets. Markets are important, but they have a lot of shortcomings. A second assumption in conventional marketing is the sovereignty of consumers. A lot of marketers say and argue the customer is king. The customer is the number one. And marketing simply is a servant of the customer. This view stresses the consumer rights to be informed and to have a free choice. Well, that's a very one-sided point of view, I think. And a more enhanced and balanced view would be to consider consumer responsibilities as well. To consider consumer responsibilities means to consider consequences of consumer decisions and to include social and environmental impacts in consumer behavior. So in sustainability marketing, we try to balance the two, consumer rights and consumer responsibilities. A third assumption in conventional marketing is the satisfaction of needs and wants. Actually, the satisfaction of needs and wants is a core concept of marketing. And there is a great variety of needs and wants, including subsistence, protection, affection, understanding, participation, and so on and so forth. In conventional marketing, there are two further assumptions. One is that all of these needs are endless. They are insatiable. A second one is that these needs can be satisfied by the consumption of goods, material goods. That you can increase life quality by means of material goods. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed." So what he tries to point out is that Earth, the planet Earth and the natural environment provides enough to at least satisfy basic needs, but if we go far beyond that, like the global consumer, for example, it's not enough for everyone. An assumption in conventional marketing is the more we earn and spend on material goods, the higher is the life quality, the more happy we are. Is this assumption really true? Here you see an empirical study conducted in the United States, but many other countries of the world as well. And the empirical results are similar. On the one hand side, you see the average income increasing over time. So during the last 50 years or so, between 1955 and 2005, the average income in the United States increased from almost 10,000 US dollars to more than 20,000 US dollars. So the average income almost more than doubled during the last 50 years. And then on the other side, you see the percentage of people who claim to be happy. They were asked on a scale from 1 to 10, from very unhappy to very happy, which means a 10. They were asked, how do you feel? Do you feel happy with your life? And on average, about 30% during the last 50 years claimed to be very happy. So you see, if you have a certain average income, about 30% claim to be happy. But as income rises, the percentage of very happy people does not necessarily rise as well. A fourth assumption of conventional marketing is the peripheral nature of nature. The natural environment is hardly included at all. It is just one environment besides the technological, the political, the legal, and the economic environment to be considered in the strategic analysis of different kinds of environments. In sustainability marketing, as pointed out in lecture 2, the natural environment is the starting point of sustainability marketing. It's very important. And there are two different perspectives which are rather important. The first one is the inside-out perspective. So inside out means from the company towards the natural environment. The other one is the outside-in perspective. Here we take the natural environment and what it does to the company. Here you see the inside-out perspective. From this perspective, nature is perceived as rather fragile and vulnerable. It has to be preserved and protected. Here you see another nice landscape which has to be preserved and protected. The outside-in perspective has a different perception. It perceives the natural environment as something wild, as merciless, and potentially dangerous to human health and life. So in sustainability marketing, we have to consider both perspectives. And in the future, due to climate change, we will see more natural disasters which affect human life and health. So that's why we have to consider both perspectives in sustainability marketing. Let's move on to the key term brand ethos. Ethos comes from the Greek word character. It's the character of a brand and the core values of a company. Here you have the example and the logo, the brand of Electrolux. Electrolux is a global leader in household appliances, including refrigerators, dishwashers, washing machines, and so on and so forth. The tagline, "Thinking of you," means, on the one hand, to meet and to exceed customer needs and wants. In addition to that, on the other side, it means to take the environmental and social responsibilities seriously as the company and the brand. So Electrolux wants to position itself as a company that cares about the customer, but also about the social and the natural environments. Here we can differentiate between product brands and corporate brands. Take, for example, Natura, the sustainability marketing story in the beginning of the lecture. Natura is the corporate brand, whereas Natura Ecos is the product brand on the level of the assortment. The product brand is targeted at the customer, whereas the corporate brand considers all kinds of stakeholders, including market stakeholders, but also political and public stakeholders, as discussed in Lecture 2. In the last couple of years, corporate brands became more important. Why is that? Because many stakeholders are rather critical about companies. Companies are under scrutiny. So that's why corporate brands complement product brands and stand for the core values of the company. Natura as well as Electrolux are good examples for this kind of development. If a company wants to live up to the core values, leaders, personalities are rather important. Here we can differentiate between 4 types of corporate leaders according to the degree of moral motives and the strategic motives. First, the first type would be the self-employer. They have rather low moral motives and strategic motives. They just want to make a living and support themselves. Do-gooders have very high principles and they are less interested in making a lot of money. They want to drive a certain social or environmental cause. The third type, opportunists, have a rather low moral motive, but very strong economic and strategic motives. They see, for example, there's a new target group like the LOHAS, the lifestyle of health and sustainability, and they see it's a very attractive, important market segment, rising during the last couple of years. So they take the opportunity and target this group. And then there's the fourth type, ethical strategists. They have very high principles, but they also want to make profit. They want to make a living. I would say, especially in the later stages, Anita Roddick is a good example for that. Once she claimed, or she said, the business of business should not just be about money, it should be about responsibility. It should be about public good, not private greed. So here she talks about making money on the one hand, but also about taking responsibility. So she tries to balance the two. You might say she's an ethical strategist. If you think about the company she established, the core values and the brand ethos of the Body Shop is to activate self-esteem. So not to put women down in advertising, to make them inferior, but rather to be proud of themselves. A second one is to protect the natural environment, our planet, as we discussed in lecture 3, which is rather small and fragile in the darkness in the outer space. So again, it's a certain kind of perception of a natural environment. The third core value is against animal testing, which is rather important in the cosmetic industry. The fourth one is about supporting community trading, especially in the case of third world countries. Inclusive business. And the fifth one is to defend human rights, especially in these areas, especially when it comes to suppliers from third world countries. So this is the brand ethos of the core values of the company reflected in the brand. And obviously, customers think the same about this brand. They have positive feelings. They understand these core values. That's why so many customers around the world buy the products from the Body Shop. Let's have a look at the bottom line. Usually in conventional marketing, it's all about customer value and making a profit. The ecological and the social environments are hardly considered at all. In sustainability marketing, it's all about the triple bottom line. How to create ecological value and social value added, and how to combine it with customer value. Let's have a look at the three different dimensions. The first one would be the economic objectives of sustainability marketing. Of course, revenue, market share, profit matter in sustainability marketing as well. Revenue, market share, and profit are rather short-term objectives. Long-term objectives are customer satisfaction and customer value. So the value a customer has over his lifetime. These are important objectives in the case of relationship marketing. And as we said in lecture 1, sustainability marketing is always relationship marketing. So these economic objectives are considered and important in sustainability marketing as well. In addition to that, ecological objectives are rather important. along the entire life cycle of products from cradle to grave of a product, including the material use, the water use, the different kind of emissions, may it be air emissions, noise, effluents, and the waste you have by means of production, but also using and disposing a product. Social objectives are product safety during use, the impacts of products on health, the employee safety and the employee satisfaction and fair wages, especially in the stage of the production and manufacturing, the processing of products. One of the key questions in sustainability marketing is how to combine the two. This is not an easy proposition. Actually, it's very difficult. Nike actually tries to do that. About 20 years ago, Nike was one of the design and marketing companies, mainly thinking about customers, not thinking about the social and environmental consequences at all. They were criticized to a large extent in the 1990s. And in the beginning, they ignored these criticisms, and they even said, we don't have anything to do with our suppliers and the suppliers of our suppliers. They didn't want to have anything to do with that. Later on, they changed their approach due to the heavy criticism, influencing their brands and also the revenues, their market share. So ever since the turn of the century, they have followed a strategic approach to corporate social responsibility, as discussed in Lecture 2. What they do, for example, they launch a program called Let Me Play. Let Me Play, they invested a couple of hundreds millions of dollars to poor communities in the United States and other parts of the world. And they think sports have a positive impact on the life of young generations. That's why they invested into the infrastructure of sports. On the one hand, that enhances the social value. On the other hand, these are all, the young generations are also potential and actual customers of the brand. So you see the strategic approach, how they try to remedy social problems, but at the same time to increase future sales and customer value. But as I said before, the proposition, the combination of the three is not an easy task. It's a very difficult and complex task of sustainability marketers. Here are the review and discussion questions. First, describe the 4 types of sustainability marketers with respect to ethical, moral, and economic strategic motives. What does brand ethos mean? Give examples of brands with sustainability ethos. And third, do companies like The Body Shop, Electrolux, and Nike really live up to their corporate core values? Search websites that are critical about the companies and discuss the gap between rhetoric and reality. Here are the references. Pages 170 and to 132 of our textbook. In addition to that, the PhD thesis by Andrew Grain on marketing, morality, and the natural environment, as well as the textbook by Andrew Grain and Dirk Matten, Business Ethics. Thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.